1. The last time I ever ran Expo on a weekend. Sorry for the long one, a good bit of context is necessary since my place of work functions a bit differently. I will start where the story starts, but the context helps a lot. I work at a small, upscale, very fast-paced restaurant in a mid-sized city where I started as a host and moved to serving and then bartending later on. When I first got moved from the door to the floor, I had a transition weekend where I was running Expo on Friday and Saturday night. We don't have a dedicated Expo, the shift is given to a server, and on Fridays and Saturdays, it is always the same server by her request. I'll call her Kay. Kay is a goddamn powerhouse. She's worked here for 10 years and no one can handle weekend Expo like her. When I was given these shifts, I knew I had big shoes to fill. Our Expo is essentially responsible for making sure everything is in the proper place and fully stocked. This includes water pitchers and coffee pots being full, the bread station having enough olive oil, silverware being rolled, etc. Expo also runs most of the food and sometimes brings bread, water, and drinks to tables if the server asks. Since we pool tips, these are tasks that all servers should always be doing, but Expo is there to allow servers to focus more on their tables while we're busy. Expo gets paid the same $3.50-ish an hour and the same cut out of the pool as servers based on how many hours they work, but they are never taking tables unless it's an emergency. I worked Friday night and while it was stressful, it wasn't too eventful except the AC being broken. The only thing that made Friday worse than Saturday was the fact that we had 3 additional sections, about 20 tables, outside on Friday night. It rained on Saturday and outside was closed. But don't worry, I'll get to that. Other than the number of tables, we had all of the best servers on the schedule, including Kay, who had been moved to working a section since we were short-staffed. I remember remarking to her that I had no clue how she did it, and she said, "You at least had a proper staff tonight. Have fun tomorrow." Star. I showed up to work on Saturday and it was drizzling, but not fully raining. On weekends in summer, we run 5 sections, 2 inside, 3 outside, of about 8 tables each. When it's too cold for outside seating or it's raining, the outside is closed and the inside turns into 3 slightly smaller sections. By this point, outside hadn't been officially closed, but no one was out there, leaving 3 servers standing around while 2 did all the work. We cut one of them right after I got there, and theoretically should have cut another, as we only needed 3, but wanted to be safe in case the forecast was wrong. It started pouring soon and we cut the other opener and shifted to our inside sections. Our veteran server, I'll call S, took the busiest one while 2 of our summer staff, A and C, took the slightly easier ones. We'd all had issues with both of them being slow and lackluster, particularly C, so I wasn't looking forward to what was coming next. By 6:30, it is pouring rain and disgustingly humid inside the restaurant due to the lack of air conditioning, still hadn't been fixed. This is when our rush starts. The room is literally overflowing with people as my replacement host tries to please them all on her second day of the job and after losing half the tables in the restaurant due to rain. She's another story, but by then we just assumed she was slow because she was new. Anyway, everyone's waiting at the bar and it's impossible to run food over there due to the crowd. Ended up just dropping plates in the service bar window and saying sorry. Around 7 o'clock, things start to get hairy. S and I are busting ass despite the mad rush. C is kind of floundering around but doing okay, and A, who's working what's widely considered the easiest section, is moving at a snail's pace. I wasn't supposed to be taking orders as Expo, especially since I hadn't been trained as a full server yet, but A's tables kept grabbing me and saying they hadn't seen their server in ages, so I felt bad and wrote them down to give to my manager to put in. I am sweating profusely just trying to get tables bussed and turned around quickly so the literal horde of people waiting can all sit down. S and C are turning tables quickly, but because A is giving such slow service, her tables are sitting for a while. Meanwhile, she's showing absolutely no inclination that she's in the weeds. I ask her if she needs anything, common practice for Expo when stocking is up to par. She just shrugs and says no, she's fine. A glance at her section shows otherwise. Empty water glasses, finished plates uncleared, an empty table unbussed, and a whole section minus the one empty table looking around like where the fuck is my server? Side note, for more context, we're allowed to ring in food for ourselves during shift. Servers usually ring it under a table number that doesn't exist, usually 100 or 101, which are very far from our normal table numbers to avoid confusion. Typically this does not happen until the kitchen is almost closed and or we are not busy, and due to the tip pool there is usually a "hey, I'm gonna go eat" conversation had with the other servers. I have a window literally full of food, somewhere between 16 and 20 plates, that I've just cleared when a single plate comes up. I look at the ticket and cannot fucking believe my eyes. Table 100, server listed as A. She ordered herself fucking shrimp in the middle of the dinner rush when she is clearly behind. I had already picked up the plate, expecting it to be for a table, and I slammed it right back down and said fuck that. Then another plate comes up, also hers. I was livid. Bear in mind, the restaurant is still upwards of 80 degrees due to the AC outage and humid as hell due to the rain. I also have full forehead bangs and was wearing pants and a long-sleeved shirt. I'd been running around covering A's ass in essentially a swamp. One of the cooks looked at me and said he didn't know if I had gone out in the rain or if was just sweating so hard. She didn't have a bead of sweat on her forehead and had the audacity to order food when she saw how hard the rest of us were busting ass. I was absolutely not telling her that her food was ready, she could figure it out herself. Chef, however, did ask after a few minutes why I let the plates sit there, and I said look at the ticket. He was confused before I explained that table 100 was a server ringing food for themselves. He started cursing as I took her food up onto the stairs in the back of house to eat dinner while she had a full section on a Saturday night. Keep in mind, our kitchen feeds us a staff meal before shift, and while A has dietary restrictions, they always accommodate her. Chef and I talked for a minute before my manager came up and asked what was up, and I told him. A is on the stairs having a goddamn feast while we're on a wait and her section is full. A look of fire comes into his eyes and within seconds A is back on the floor. No apology. No acknowledgement of what had happened. Apparently she even said later on, I know the manager was mad but I just really needed to eat. And that was the last time I ever ran Expo on a weekend. For those curious, by the way, I was later fired after narrowing her ability down to only one day and calling out of that shift every week. 2. Don't ever let her borrow your phone again. This actually happened while I was bartending, but I serve at the same restaurant as well. It's not so much a customer bitching story as it is a reminder that even your regulars can surprise the hell out of you. We have a number of regulars, including people that live and work nearby. We also have a fairly steady crowd that only comes in on certain days of the week for alcohol deals that we run, discounted bottles, glasses of house wine, etc. This happened to be one of those days, and my bar was full of people looking to get a deal on drinks. One of them was a girl I'll call Sarah, who's a regular that works nearby. She comes in at least 4 times a week and orders the same thing and usually borrows my manager's phone charger while she eats. I've always found Sarah to be a little odd, but she's nice enough and has never crossed any lines, so I don't see any reason to treat her any differently. Anyway, she comes in last night, orders her usual plus a drink, and asks me to borrow my manager's charger. This happens to be a day that he's not in, which I told her. She asked if anyone else had one and I said I wasn't sure but I'd ask around. I ended up getting too busy to ask and she seemed to forget about it. Half an hour goes by and she's still at the bar. It's unusual for her to stick around that long, but she was talking to the people next to her and seemed to be having fun. I'm doing my usual periodic check-in with the folks Sarah's talking to, and she asks me again if I'm sure my manager's charger isn't upstairs. I told her that if it was, I wouldn't know where to look. She kept pressing me, so I told her I'd check my bag to see if I had mine. I don't normally carry one, but I'd been traveling and there was a chance it was still in there. It was. I gave it to her, and she plugged her phone in on a ledge in the bar. 10 or so minutes pass and she asks me to borrow my phone because hers is dead. I found it odd, but I know if an iPhone is truly dead, it can take a while to turn on, and for all I knew, it was some kind of emergency. I unlocked my phone, handed it to her, and she immediately opened my contacts. I raised my eyebrows again, but tickets were coming in, so I refocused on the bar. When I glanced over while washing my shakers, she had her phone next to mine with her contacts also open. At this point I knew she was lying to me and was officially a bit weirded out, but I was mildly busy, so I said nothing as she took my phone into the bathroom. She was in there for almost 10 minutes and I started growing concerned as to what she was doing with my phone. Just as I was about to knock on the door to the bathroom, she emerged and handed me back my phone. As soon as she looked away, I checked my messages and a few other apps to see what she'd done. I religiously clear my app history, so I knew nothing had been done there, and if she sent any messages, they'd been erased. Then I checked my call log. She had called the same number, not one I recognized, 10 times in a row. I would have already found that strange, but what happened next was wild. Probably 15 minutes after the calls, I received a message from the same number asking me to please not allow Sarah to borrow my phone. The person went on to explain that she regularly borrows people's phones to text and call them since they have her phone number blocked, and for reasons they described as necessary. They insinuated that this had been going on for a while and that I wasn't the first person they'd sent this exact message to. Of course, I apologized and said I had no idea, and they thanked me for understanding. Sarah shortly left and I said nothing about it to her. Long story short, a regular borrowed my phone to call the same number repeatedly, and the number then texted me asking me to never let her use my phone again. I don't know both sides of the story, but I will definitely think twice before letting a customer use my phone to do anything but literally call 911.